Welcome to the Summercast, a podcast aimed at making fundamentalism great again by applying confessional Baptist doctrine to all of life.
You know, I don't even know why I'm surprised anymore. Actually, in all reality, I'm not surprised. I'm really not surprised, and you shouldn't be either. And the reason I say that is because I'm looking at an article right now, and I don't have it brought up on the big screen. Again, I'm unprepared. I apologize. It's an article on the Gospel Coalition. Of course, always looking at fun things on the Gospel Coalition. The title of the article is Pre-Understanding and Postmodernism, 3 Principles for Biblical Interpretation. I just wanted to kind of go through these 3 principles that Trevin Wax here, the author of the article, points out. And I think what will stand out to everyone is the unapologetic sentimentality toward socialism, if not communism. And we'll just paint with a broad brush here and just say Marxism. And you'll get what I'm talking about when we start going through it. First, I want to see if I can bring up the article here on screen capture. That's an old one I did. Let's see here, browser source. Let's see if that works. Okay, let's grab control of it. Okay. Looks like we're in business. All right, so you guys can see it. Good little graphic there, like always. The Gospel Coalition is so trendy. You gotta hand it to them. They're so trendy. Just wish their aesthetical appeal matched the quality of their doctrine matched their aesthetical talent here. Okay, so there's three observations here, or 3 principles for biblical interpretation. Of course, biblical interpretation is all the rage these days. Here, let me shut this music off just for now. Biblical interpretation, principles thereof, hermeneutical assumptions and all of that, it's a big deal. And it's always been a big deal, but today there's basically 2 sides to this discussion, as far as I can tell, that are circulating throughout the internet, through seminaries, through churches. One side of that discussion is one that I'm totally on board with, and that is recapturing a hermeneutic that resembles much more of what the author of Hebrews was doing, especially in chapter 1. Craig Carter wrote that book, Interpreting Scripture with the Great Tradition, which is along those lines. And so that's a good kind of getting back to, I think, interpreting the Bible like it's supposed to be interpreted. There's a right epistemology behind it. It's a realist epistemology. There's some good philosophical principles and presuppositions behind that leads one to an objective conclusion as to what the Scriptures say. There's another side of this discussion that's trying to lead people into a confusing jungle of contradictions and irrationality, and that is this idea of perspectivalism, which undergirds really a lot of what's going on in this article here. But let's go to the first point, and it says, we should neither minimize nor exaggerate areas of distance that affect our ability to understand the Bible. And a few of those areas, 4 of those areas that are listed here: time, culture, geography, and language. And then what they say right under that is, what Wax says right under that, it says, our convictions regarding the perspicuity or clarity of Scripture do not preclude serious study that would shrink these areas of distance between the contemporary world and the Bible's original context. Now, what he's going to go on to do is he's going to use this as a way to kind of disenfranchise a whole segment of Bible readers, actually a whole segment of Christians, because the Gospel Coalition, contrary to its explicit claims, is implicitly all about division, all about sowing seeds of discord, which is why I think no one should really take them seriously. It's one of the reasons I critique them time and time again, because they really drive more wedges than they say they do, or than they're willing to admit. And they do so along very dangerous lines. So the four areas of distance: time, culture, geography, language. These are eventually going to be used to kind of build up to what the author is going to say, I think, under point 2. And he's actually going to use the prodigal son as an example of how we come to a text and we emphasize certain things in the text depending on the culture from which we come. And so culture is going to be used as this kind of linchpin that's going to determine how we see the Bible. And the idea here is that really we need people of different cultures in order to gain a fuller, more colorful or vibrant understanding of the Scriptures. And so we need a plethora of different cultural backgrounds involved in the work of interpreting the Bible. And what this is, what the presupposition here behind this is that perspectives that everyone sees everything according to a particular perspective, and that perspective determines the conclusions we come to regarding the Bible or really anything else. But according to the Gospel Coalition, it seems like, especially according to the Bible, when it comes to the Bible, do these perspectives really mean something? Okay, and I'm not downplaying perspectives. I'm not downplaying the fact that everyone has a different background that give people various concerns, which may lead them to be biased in certain ways. It gives people or creates in people certain blind spots that might prevent them from coming to right conclusions, true conclusions. I don't want to downplay any of that. That is in fact true. The question here is with regard to the epistemology of Scripture, or the epistemology we have when we come to Scripture. Are we able to know the truth as it is, or is truth always kind of tainted according to perspective? Is truth always kind of skewed, kind of like the pencil in the water illusion? Is truth always kind of like that pencil that goes into the water and the light kind of bends, and the actual image of the pencil, the optics of the pencil are then skewed? Is that what truth is like? Or is truth more objective? And I would assume that Trevin Wax would say, well, truth is objective, but our perspectives are going to determine how we apprehend that truth. Now, this is a problem that comes from the Enlightenment. It comes from the Enlightenment, specifically when we get to Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is trying to account for Hume's skepticism. And Immanuel Kant divides reality, really, into two categories. There is the noumenal realm, which is basically truth in itself, or you might say reality in itself. And there is the phenomenal realm, which is reality or truth as we perceive it, or as we experience it. So while truth itself might be objective, our understanding of it, our apprehension of it, is never objective. Okay, and so then you get this language of perspective, right? Our perspective really is our understanding of the truth, and everybody's understanding of the truth can be different. Hence, why, if we have any hope at all to get to something of the truth, and as much as the Bible teaches it, we need as many people as possible from as many different perspectives as possible to be the interpretive ring, to be the hermeneutics laboratory, so to speak, trying to figure out what the Scriptures teach. Okay, so there's these areas of distance: time, culture, geography, language. Culture, of course, is a big one that the Gospel Coalition and the authors that are hosted by it often use to say, well, we're blinded by certain aspects of our culture as white Americans, and therefore we need like an African-American cultural perspective in order to understand what the scriptures mean, etc., etc. And this, of course, gets us into some serious epistemological problems. And my son has come to join us. Hey, Oliver. Say hi. Say hi. There he is. Here. Come here. Sit on my lap. You can be on the show. Say hi. Say hello. All right. So obviously you run into some issues here, right? If truth is just a matter of perspective, then we live in a world of subjectivism. We're never going to be able to come to or know the objective truth, because the objective truth is always going to be skewed by our perspective. Okay? So we should neither minimize nor exaggerate areas of distance that affect our ability to understand the Bible. I agree with that, but I think what the Bible does is it assumes that we can actually close with and destroy the enemy of distance, right? There's actually a way to get beyond the distance. There's a way to kind of transcend the distance, and that, of course, is by virtue of the Word itself and the Spirit of God, as He is pleased to lead us into the truth. Okay, secondly, we all bring pre-understanding to the biblical text. All right, this is our perspective. And one of the things that I found just striking, like I really can't even believe he said this, and it's actually like semi offensive. I could imagine to like some of the people who he uses. He uses Russians and Americans in this kind of analogy. And what he says, on a similar note, E. Randolph Richards in Richard James's book, Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes. Okay, the opposite of individualism is collectivism, which is the bedrock of communism. All right, so you can just see the favoritism of Marxism in this article, and there's an animosity or an antagonism toward individualist ethics, individualist perspectives, individualist culture, economics, especially economics, because that's really what's about to happen here. He says, Misreading Scripture with Individualist Eyes, that's a book by Richards and James. It lays out ways in which our conceptual categories formed by individualistic intuitions easily miss aspects of biblical stories that arise from ancient cultures. Returning to the parable of the prodigal son as an example, it's not just that Russians are more likely than Americans to remember the famine when retelling the story, but also the famine, by the way, goodness gracious. Like, why did the famine happen in the first place? It's not just they're more likely to remember the famine. I wonder what the Ukrainians would think, right? But also that they see younger sons demand, they see the younger son's demand for independence, thereby rupturing a family relationship, as the egregious error, while Americans are more likely to emphasize the squandering of resources and the failure of self-sufficiency as the primary contributor to the son's desperation. These greedy Americans, right? These greedy Americans, good grief. I've actually never even thought about the prodigal son narrative that way. And I, to be quite honest, I don't know who has. I've never heard a pastor actually bring that out. Like it's a sin that he squandered so much of his inheritance. They may have brought it out as like a symptom of a deeper problem. But to paint with a broad brush, and I mean, I've been in churches all across the United States. I've been in churches in different countries, right? And I've never ever heard this, right? So I really don't know where he's getting his statistics. But the other thing is like, there are probably Russians, and I think I know some, who would say, yeah, squandering resources is ridiculous. I'm so glad the USSR fell, the Iron Curtain fell, so that we could actually have resources of our own, so that we could, as a people, produce resources on our own, that the government would not own the means of production. All right? I actually have a friend who once told me about the fall of the Iron Curtain as she experienced it. She lived there. She was a Russian citizen, born and raised, and witnessed the fall of the Iron Curtain. And the somewhat immediate implementation of a semi or a quasi-capitalistic system of economics in its place, which created somewhat of a vacuum because no one knew how to handle the liberty, right? And some people were like mad that communism went away. They were actually wanting to go back to the vomit, so to speak. And others were like really happy that it was gone and were anxious to start businesses, which they could have never done before. They were anxious to use their government sponsored voucher to purchase tools that they could produce things on their own, because prior to that point, government-owned means of production. People couldn't really craft anything or create their own system of economics in any given part of the country because the government laid claim to the means of production. You weren't allowed to go buy a factory or to buy the tools that you needed to produce a certain product in order to sell it. That didn't happen there. And Russians to this day are so very grateful that is gone, because most of them that live here still have family members back there, and are grateful that the developments which have occurred in Russia have indeed occurred. So this idea, we all bring a pre-understanding to the biblical text. Of course. The question is that the right thing to do? And the answer is no. No, so instead of granting the pre-understanding that we come to, the pre-understanding that, by the way, is going to skew the meaning of the text, instead of granting it and saying, yeah, let's just grant that and then bring in as many people from different backgrounds as possible so that we can get a fuller orbed understanding of the Bible, how about we reject this epistemology and we say, no, each and every person who has the Spirit of God dwelling in them has the eyes of faith to read and receive the biblical data. They have what it takes to know the truth. It doesn't matter what their cultural background is. There is no Jew or Gentile. There is no circumcision nor uncircumcision. There is no male nor female. No category, no distinction that is going to affect how a child of God, adopted through the blood and righteousness of Christ, is going to understand God's revelation. This whole perspectival subjectivist hermeneutic and epistemology is deadly to the church. It's deadly to the church, deadly to Christians. And sadly, Christians who do not have discernment, they've never run aground these issues before, they're just like, yeah, this sounds correct, this makes sense. But there's Marxism laced throughout all of this. 3, we should counter the idea that all claims to knowledge are in the service of power. And of course, it goes back to the Frankfurt School. That's language that comes straight from the Frankfurt School and the advent of critical theory, which is just really an appropriation of Marxism. And here's what he says. In Limuru, Kenya, in 2007, a working group associated with the Global Evangelical Lausanne Conference pointed out how postmodernism is an ally for evangelicals only insofar as it exposes the modern myths of exhaustive knowledge and human progress. Postmodernism has punctured Enlightenment hubris, and at this, evangelicals can rejoice. Postmodernism is a child of the Enlightenment. This kind of philosophical dissonance is just something that, I just pray for God's grace and His mercy on this nation. I really do, because the blindness is insane. Postmodernism is a child of the Enlightenment, and it's a child of the Enlightenment in this sense. Again, it goes back to Immanuel Kant more so than it does David Hume, but really this really kicks off. It doesn't kick off, absolutely, but in a very big way, in a punctuated sense. It kicks off with David Hume, but it goes back to Immanuel Kant. This idea that our perspective skews reality in itself, right? Because we can only know things as we perceive them. That's the phenomenal realm. We can't puncture and get into the noumenal realm. And if that's the case, if our perspective determines how we perceive or apprehend the truth, and thus truth is always skewed, that's what comes out of the Enlightenment. Consequently, postmodernism says there is no objective truth. Truth is whatever you want it to be. What's beautiful to me is beautiful to me, and what's beautiful to you is beautiful to you. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Truth is in the eye of the beholder. There is no such thing as objective truth. Well, can you not see how that is a birth child of Enlightenment thought? When you get rid of a realist epistemology, when you get rid of the assumption that we can actually know the truth as it is in itself, that we can actually apprehend reality and know it for what it is, when you get rid of that, which is what happened in the Enlightenment, then postmodernism is your next step. Postmodernism is your next step. Oh, well, there is no objective truth. Just get rid of the noumenal realm altogether. We can't know it anyways. All we have is the phenomenal. That's what postmodernism is. So postmodernism does nothing to puncture Enlightenment hubris. Postmodernism is the fruit of Enlightenment hubris. And the Gospel Coalition needs to be exposed for this kind of language. This kind of language, it may veil, it may trick and confuse the common reader, but there's a great many of us out there, guys, that can see right through this stuff. They can see right through this stuff. And guess what? It's only going to get worse for you. It's only going to get worse for you. Because with the recovery of ancient hermeneutics and solid publishing on the doctrine of God, on divine simplicity, looking at Thomas's 5 proofs, and there's more coming out on a realist epistemology, that we can actually know reality as it is, that not everything's a subjective, confusing jungle of indeterminacy. The more people are just, and the more people get a hold of those resources, the more people are just going to write this kind of stuff off. I mean, people are already doing it. I really, in my personal circles, and I know this is anecdotal, in my personal circles, I don't know anybody that takes the Gospel Coalition seriously anymore. I don't know anybody that does. And I mean, I know quite a few people in quite a few areas of the country, and I really don't know anyone who takes the Gospel Coalition seriously, who's like, yeah, you need to go check out the Gospel Coalition because that's really where it's at. I've never, in the last few years, I haven't heard anybody recommend the Gospel Coalition. I haven't heard anybody, I haven't even really seen anybody post Gospel Coalition's articles in a favorable light. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 here and there that are good, just happen to be good because a broken clock is right, twice a day. And you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, of course. So I'm not doubting that there can be true things on the Gospel Coalition, but it's really not like a go-to for anybody anymore. And it's because of this. People can see how they're trying to appropriate postmodernism, and really behind that, trying to appropriate Marxism into Christian theology, and conservatives in the Southern Baptist Convention, conservatives, independent conservatives, conservatives in the PCA and the OPC and the RPCNA, they're doing away with this stuff. They're doing away with this stuff. They're not recommending the Gospel Coalition to their congregations as a resource. There's many more better resources out there than this. This is just disastrous. This article is a travesty. So anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. Click the subscribe button at the bottom right. if you want to subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to click the bell for continued notifications. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.